Oh, okay. Should we get started? Yeah. Bismillah, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So we're going to pick up where we left off in the text. We've been talking about the night journey and ascension of the Prophet alayhi salam, al-Isra wal-Miraj. And we're getting towards the end of the Meccan period of the Seerah, where we've been talking about this in the frame of a couple of different things. The Prophet has faced a lot of difficulty and tribulation up until this point in his experiences in Mecca. Not only has he been rejected and abused by the people of Taif, he's prior to that lost his wife Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, his uncle Abu Talib, but also has sustained severe boycott that lasts for multiple years, a lot of persecution, hardship that has had him witness his companions having to migrate, leave behind their homes, be beaten, abused, and even killed. And a decade plus now is bringing him to this experience of al-Isra wal-Miraj that we've been looking at in a prism of healing. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. The Quran says that with hardship there comes ease, with hardship there comes ease, and this becomes one of the indicators of ease for the Prophet, peace be upon him. We've also been talking about in terms of knowledge acquisition, where the Prophet is asking the angel Jibreel alayhi salam quite often about who is this, what is this. When the angel is asking him, do you know who this was? Do you know where this was? And he's yielding to the idea that he doesn't, and giving an indication that at 52 years of age that he's still willing to learn despite having this title of the rank of the last messenger of God. But also, and I don't think we've ever said this, like building off of this point, when he goes into Medina, we're going to see that the Prophet essentially is amongst those who migrate to Medina, and he's from Mecca, he's not from Medina. And some of you have been to Mecca and Medina. Some of us have been together to Mecca and Medina, right? If you've been to Mecca and Medina are very different places, right? Yes or no? Yeah. And what are some of the differences and just your own individual experiences being in Mecca and Medina? Like if you were to highlight some, how would you say they're different from each other?
Medina is more peaceful.
It's more peaceful, yeah.
Yeah, so along the same lines, I just remember a feeling of awe in Makkah and just more calmness in Medina.
Great. Anything else? Like just thinking more broadly about the city, its landscape, the people that you interact with, building off of these ideas of tranquility and awe and calmness. Like, are there other distinctions to the cities of Mecca and Medina that come to mind? There are. Are you nodding your head? Why are you nodding?
I feel like your heart like shatters to come to Kaaba, and then in Medina it's just back together.
Yeah. Well, let's think about it in a different prism. Like, we're in Manhattan. If we go from Manhattan to Connecticut, they're like two entirely different places, correct? Do you know? If you went from Connecticut to Kentucky, very different places. Do you know what I mean? So the Prophet going from Mecca to Medina, he's amongst those who migrate from Mecca to Medina, meaning he's an immigrant to Medina, correct? And even what we see when he gets into Medina, he's asking a lot just about how and why Medina is the way that it is. He's not assuming that when he comes in, he already knows everything about the culture of Medina. And the culture of Medina is very different from the culture of Mecca. When the companions first come to Medina, they don't like it. It's a swamp land. Everybody's getting sick. They miss Mecca. This is why the Prophet makes dua for people to love Medina, because people didn't like being in Medina when they first came. And when they're in a place where he has an opportunity to just kind of understand and comprehend the particulars of the society that he's in, it's not Mecca, like it's Medina. They're a gross distance apart from one another. Do you know? We could get to Connecticut quicker from the middle of the village than you can get from Mecca to Medina. Do you know what I mean? Customs, norms, traditions are different. And the Prophet is consistently asking, like, what is this? Why is this like this? How do you all do things here? Do you understand? Does that make sense? And you're seeing this like when he's on Al Isra wal Miraj. Questions are being asked, questions are being answered. There's a yield to the idea that I fundamentally don't have to know everything, but I don't go in with the assumption that I also know everything. Do you know? And you think, like, how many conversations have you ever been a part of? And then somebody else just joins the conversation somehow, and they just start talking as if they knew what was going on from the beginning of the conversation, right? Adults do this to kids all the time. The Prophet, when he comes upon the young boy whose pet bird died, you know, and there's a group gathered around this young boy, and the Prophet ﷺ first asked the adults who are around, like, what's happened? And they tell him the baby bird of this boy has died. And then the Prophet goes and even asks the kid, like, what happened, right? Ya Abu Umair, ma fa'ala nughair, that, oh, Abu Umair, what happened to the little bird? But the opportunity to understand that you're not just going into a conversation with the assumption that you know everything, you go and you make inquiry before you jump in, right? And when he's coming into this new place, he's not assuming that he already understands the custom and the locale, but on Al Isra wal Miraj, he's asking a lot of questions. Who is this? What is this? And when the angel is also asking him, do you know who this is? Or do you know what this place was you just prayed? He is yielding to the idea that he doesn't know, and there's an opportunity to understand before speaking. Do you see what I mean? It's like a real necessary skill set. Do you know? Uh, a kadhab in our like understanding is somebody who lies. Do you know? Gadhib is somebody who like speaks only hearing one part of the story. Do you see the difference? Right? Sometimes there's no like neutrality. Sometimes there's one part of the story. Abuse, suppression, there's no two sides. A lot of times there are two sides because it doesn't fit into those things. So somebody said something to me and I'm just repeating it without recognizing that, well, what's like the other vantage point to this? Do you know? Or I already assume that I've heard enough that I can offer like an insight on something, and I just know how everybody does everything the way that they do, or assume that it's just the way that I did it. He didn't go from Mecca to Medina assuming that because I'm from Mecca, I just know how they do this in Medina, but he's also being taught in a pedagogy on Al Isra wal Miraj where there's opportunities for him to learn, and the questions are being asked of him, or he's asking the questions, making these inquiries. Who is this? What is this? And then when you get down on the ground, he's trying to comprehend, like, how do things fundamentally work here? Do you see? Does that make sense? But all of this goes in this prism of healing, knowledge acquisition being a source of contentment, and understanding this as a parallel to where we're at. And we got through the part now where the Prophet has met Adam alayhi salam, and he's now being taken by the angel Jibrail, and he's going into now the second level of this. And we'll just pick up from that and read through this as much as we can. Then they ascended to the second heaven. Jibra'il asked for the gate to be opened. Someone said, "Who is this?" Jibra'il, "Who is with you?" Muhammad, "Has he been sent for?" "Yes." "Welcome to him from his family. May Allah grant him long life, a brother of ours and a deputy of Allah. And what excellent brother and deputy. What an excellent visit is this." The gate was opened. When they came in, they saw the sons of the two sisters, Isa ibn Maryam and Yahya ibn Zakaria. They resembled each other in clothing and hair. Each had with him a large company of their people. Isa was curly haired, of medium build, leaning towards fair complexion, with hair let down as if he were coming out of the bath. He resembles Urwa ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi. The Prophet greeted them and they returned his greeting. Then they said, "Welcome to the righteous brother and the righteous Prophet." Then they invoked forgiveness on his behalf. And they're going to continue into the third heaven. Understanding why it's important that our tradition has also depictions of what Isa ibn Maryam looks like, so that we can juxtapose these to kind of recognitions of where we are contemporarily. A lot of us don't consciously formulate for ourselves a conceptualization of the divine. And a paradox to decision making is that when you don't make a choice, you've essentially chosen, and you get impacted through socialization. So when we live in a society that's heavily influenced by Judeo Christian values, and saying this objectively and sociologically, you get to a place where you start to be impacted in your understandings of God potentially, not through a grammatically masculine God that the Arabic language presents to us, or a Quranic understanding of a negative knowledge that's not pessimistically negative, but a negative knowledge of the divine that's rooted in the idea that we know who Allah is by knowing who He is not. Right? Laysa kamithlihi shay. There's not anything that's like a likeness to Allah. So God is different from His creation. But when you have a male centric understanding of the divine, God the Father, God the Son, right, and a triunal system that adds in God the Spirit, our religion teaches us that you don't mock people's beliefs, but to understand why I might land somewhere where I land brings me to a place where that heavily male centered focus can now believe for me unconsciously a recognition of the divine that has male centered attributes. But Laysa kamithlihi shay, God is different from His creation in our tradition. That's like Islamic theology. And then when you trickle it down also to the idea that we not only have sayings or a certain reverence and deference for Mary, peace be upon her, and Jesus, peace be upon him, but depictions of him, the challenge that comes up is not now also just to like a male centered understanding of the divine, but it also challenges norms around like whiteness that we get surrounded with quite consistently that give us a depiction that is other than what is historically accurate or actual. And it gets embedded into a lot of different parts of just the society we find ourselves in, right? And you see, like in your head, if I was to tell you, picture what like a iconographic understanding of Mary or Jesus is, you're gonna have like some visualization that you've seen likely from some place. And when we look at hadith like this, it's giving us an understanding of uh, who Isa alayhi salam had a resemblance of, to give us also an understanding that he looked like these people who are Arabs. Do you know? Like he doesn't look like he came out of like, Sweden or Norway, right? He looks like he came out of the Middle East. Do you know what I mean? And where that juxtaposition comes in for us to recognize, well, why would there be situationally uh, a benefit to kind of skewing that understanding And you want to know what your religion says about this, so that you're now not adopting an understanding that's coming from other philosophies or methodologies that um, can keep us from getting to like the depth of an engagement or relationship. Does that make sense? The Prophet alayhi salam, he's meeting these people on that second level. So Isa ibn Maryam and Yahya ibn Zakaria. After this, the Prophet and Jibreel ascended to the third heaven. Jibreel asked for the gate to be opened. Someone said, "Who is this?" Jibreel, "Who is with you? Muhammad, has he been sent for?" "Yes." "Welcome to him from his family. May Allah grant him long life. A brother of ours and a deputy of Allah. And what an excellent brother and deputy. What an excellent visit is this." The gate was open. When they came in, they saw Yusuf alayhi salam, and with him stood a large company of his people. The Prophet greeted him, and he returned his greeting and said, "Welcome to the righteous brother and the righteous Prophet." Then he invoked for goodness on his behalf. Yusuf had been granted the gift of beauty. One narration says he was the most handsome creation that Allah had ever created, and he surpassed people in beauty the way the full moon surpasses all other stars. The Prophet asked, "Who is this, O Jibreel?" He replied, "Your brother Yusuf." Then they ascended to the fourth heaven. Jibreel asked for the gate to be opened. Someone said, "Who is this?" "Jibreel, who is with you? Muhammad, has he been sent for?" "Yes." "Welcome to him from his family. May Allah grant him long life. A brother of ours and a deputy of Allah. And what excellent brother and deputy. What an excellent visit is this." The gate was open. When they came in, they saw Idris. Allah exalted him to a lofty place. The Prophet greeted him, and he returned his greeting and said, "Welcome to the righteous brother and the righteous Prophet." Then he invoked for goodness on his behalf. Then they ascended to the fifth heaven. Jibreel asked for the gate to be opened. Someone said, "Who is this?" "Jibreel, who is with you? Muhammad, has he been sent for?" "Yes." "Welcome to him from his family. May Allah grant him long life. A brother of ours and a deputy of Allah. And what an excellent brother and deputy. What an excellent visit is this." The gate was open. When they came in, they saw Harun. Half of his beard was white and the other half was black. It almost reached his navel due to its length. Surrounding him were a company of the children of Israel, listening to him as he was telling them a story. The Prophet greeted him, and he returned his greeting and said, "Welcome to the righteous brother and the righteous Prophet." Then he invoked for goodness on his behalf. The Prophet asked, "Who is this, O Jibreel?" He replied, "This is the man who is beloved amongst his people, Harun ibn Imran." Then they ascended to the sixth heaven. Jibreel asked for the gate to be opened. Someone said, "Who is this?" "Jibreel, who is with you? Muhammad, has he been sent for?" "Yes." "Welcome to him from his family. May Allah grant him long life, a brother of ours and a deputy of Allah. And what excellent brother and deputy, what an excellent visit is this." The gate was open. The Prophet passed by prophets who had with them less than 10 followers in all, while others had a large company, and others had not even one follower. Then he saw a huge dark mass that was covering the firmament. He said, "What is this throng?" He was told, "This is Musa and his people. Now raise your head and look." He raised his head and saw another huge dark mass that was covering the firmament from every direction he looked. He was told, "These are your community, and besides these, there are 70,000 of them that will enter Jannah without giving account. May Allah make us amongst them." As they went in, the Prophet saw Musa ibn Imran, again a tall man with brown complexion, similar to those of Yemeni men of pure lineage and manly virtue, with abundant hair. If he had 2 shirts on him, still his hair would exceed them. The Prophet greeted him, and he returned his greeting and said, "Welcome to the righteous brother and the righteous Prophet." Then he invoked for goodness on his behalf and said, "The people claim that amongst the sons of Adam, I am more honored by Allah than this one, but it is he who is more honored by Allah than me." When the Prophet reached him, Musa wept. He was asked, "What is it that makes you weep?" He replied, "I weep because a child that was sent after me will enter more people in paradise from his community than will enter from mine." The children of Israel claim that among the children of Adam, I am the most honored by Allah. But here is one man amongst the children of Adam who has come after me in the world while I am in the next world and is more honored. If he were only by himself, I would not mind, but he has his community with him. Why do we think that at every point of interaction, there is this exchange that has similar language to it? That the Prophet ﷺ is being given this response of welcome to him from his family. May Allah grant him long life, a brother of ours and a deputy of Allah. And what an excellent brother and deputy, what an excellent visit is this. Like, what is the gain and the benefit of these interactions as he's crossing now across these 7 levels? And we get to the 7th, we're going to get in a little bit more detail on certain things because the interaction with Musa alayhi salam is going to be a little bit more detailed than these other ones. But what do we think is the point of this? As you're understanding, like Al-Isra wal-Miraj, where the Prophet has come from, he's already in Jerusalem, prayed with every single prophet, led them in prayer. He's gone through a lot of different experiences. Here we have particular individuals from the line of prophethood that he is meeting. And in those interactions, they are engaging one another, and he doesn't know who they are. After each time he's asking, who is this person? And the Prophet is being told. But there's still that given back of a dua, of a welcome, of a prayer. So just so we can kind of get talking as people are kind of trickled in more, and maybe we could have people move in this way so that if anybody comes in to pray, we're not blocking the doorway for them. So if you guys want to scoot in here, and we can turn to the persons next to us. If you don't know names, exchange names. Why do we think this is something that the Prophet is experiencing now? He's being taken through these different levels, and he's meeting these individual prophets. He's being shown like the size of his ummah in comparison to the size of the ummah of other prophets, including Musa alayhi salam. If we can turn to the person next to us and talk to it a little bit about why we think this is, and then we'll come back and discuss. But go ahead. Yeah.
builds up your knowledge of
His like family members, or like his companions, sorry, like his companions, like sympathize with him the way they would. So that's very I know.
he's not
Yeah, and then whoever, like, oh, I said it's like Avatar. Oh, yeah. So like right around here. If that counts. When you say,
I like saving time.
not sure. I don't know if that's I tried to watch
What are you guys talking about? You
Oh.
ain't even trying to talk about things.
No, I
What?
was.
She's eating a sandwich, and you guys are talking about Netflix or whatever.
I was saying
Are you
that
kidding me?
Avatar.
Avatar?
You know how they meet all the avatars? Yeah. I get it.
You talking about Avatar also? You are? Great. Why do we think he was taken to meet these people through these seven heavens?
And maybe it's also that like sign of like
Yusra, Yusra, did Amira tell you what the things were? She said they were gonna ask the guy from the shelter. There was a lot of errors happening on the.
they didn't get back to me on that.
Okay, that might be why there's not a lot of people buying stuff. Yeah.
The second mission is to address that.
Okay.
The first one is one.
Okay. Great. Yeah.
You're gonna get down to it?
Huh?
Are you going to get down to it?
Yeah. You can do it. You want to?
Me, no.
No? I'll tell people. Okay. I'll let people know.
This girl wanted to feel swipe.
You want a meal swipe?
She told me no.
Why?
It's
You
like
get rid
take
of
it
it.
so I can.
Oh, you can take it too. Go ahead.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, is there anything else? Oh,
No, but if there's more people you know who wants them, tell them to use it. Okay. What are we talking about? Why do we think this is happening? Like, how does it fit in? Because it's very easy to think, like, here's these people, they represent those who engage in what's lawful versus unlawful. Here are the people who were usurping the wealth of orphans. Here are the people who were committing these acts of inequity and injustice and infidelity and whatever. Now the prophet is being taken through experientially these different levels, and he's meeting like very like luminous individuals, right? Like, why? Why is this happening? What do we talk about? Yeah.
I think you hinted in the beginning of the conversation that he was being taught by Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So basically, Israel Miraj was like kind of steps of like kind of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was taught about the secrets of the universe, maybe the physical laws and everything, and then and within each steps of those teaching, he was ascended another level, and then that ascension was appreciated or attested by the previous prophets, and they were also like waiting him for coming from the Adam, from his story of like salvation when he repented on the sins that he committed. He saw his name at the gate of the Jannah. So every prophet was like in a way expecting him and his ascension. It kind of confirms the full story of the Quran in a way. That's why I think it's the most miraculous event in the Islamic theology.
Okay. Exactly. Okay. Other thoughts? Yeah.
When you were having our Jordan talk, I didn't think of this, but when the brother just said about introducing to the other prophets, it made me think of it. So I feel like it was kind of just like a respect thing. Like if I'm walking around and introducing maybe people, like I would say this is Imam Khalid, this is Imam Khalid, like I'm not just gonna switch to Khalid because I got lazy, or just because I already introduced you to someone else. So he's going to each level, and obviously the angels are all really compared to the ordinary. So he's introduced, I mean, excuse me, not the angels, the prophets. So he's just introducing him with kind of like the respect each time, I think.
Okay. Other thoughts? Yeah.
As we were talking, like I was thinking that it could be happening verbatim with him and all the prophets to give him some sort of validation that he is like a prophet. He's one of them because in his own community and in his own circles, like no one can relate to him the way the prophets can. Like no one has been persecuted or tested the way the prophets have. Like no one has been given that type of responsibility the way the prophets have. So it happening verbatim and him getting that from the prophets could validate his experiences and also give him a sense of belonging in a place or in a situation or status where there could be no type of empathy given.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
You mentioned how, like, up until now, there had been just so much pain for him throughout the journey, and now it's like a portion of healing. So each time he's meeting a prophet, hearing them go good for him, and like learning and seeing side of Islam, is like kind of a healing thing for him to experience.
Yeah. I mean, all of it makes sense, right? And we want to like think and reflect on it so that we're not just understanding it and experiencing it as a story. Try to conceptualize if you walked into a space and you knew of someone but didn't necessarily have a capacity to distinguish, or you never imagined you would come into interaction with that person in your life in some way, shape, or form. You know, you go to a sports game and you're suddenly sitting like next to one of the key players on the team, or next to you is a celebrity or somebody who's a well-known public figure or something to that extent, right? If you were walking down the street or you went to like a rally and you saw now like in front of you somebody who uh, people are gathered around versus they're like engaging you one on one. You know, we saw all of these individuals who really struggled and responded with immense beauty in the horrific realities of what was taking place in Gaza over the course of the last year and a half, right? What would it feel like if you walked into this room and there was a group of people surrounding someone and somebody says, "Who is that?" And you say, "I don't know." And then another person said, "That was a doctor who was in Gaza for 7 months, risking his life to just save people's lives." You would feel suddenly something inside, right? And then think about other people that you saw whose names got a little bit more recognition. His brother Mansour Shuman, who in the early part was on the ground and became a civilian journalist. His brother Motaz, who a lot of people saw all over social media and was in a place where only when it became clear he was going to be targeted and his life was going to be taken, he made the difficult reality of like leaving from the place. Do you know? And if you were in any space where somebody that you look up to because they're just a good person, not because of the wealth they have, not because of the brands that they have, but you fundamentally just understand that that person was a good person, do you know? And then they came up to you, right? Malcolm X knew your name. Martin Luther King Jr. knew your name. Do you know what I mean? Motaz came and shook your hand and said, "It's so nice to meet you," and already knew of you. Do you see? And the Prophet is going through each of these levels. And at the end, who is that? That was Idris. What's going on in his head? Idris alayhi salam knows me. Musa alayhi salam knows me. Zakaria, Isa, may Allah's peace be upon all of it. Like, who is this? That's who this is. Validation comes in a lot of different ways, and the normalcy of engagement of it, rooted in the ideas of isolation, loneliness, healing that we're talking about, but also a sense of validation that stems from a recognition of everything that is bringing him up until this point. Yielding in the idea that you're going to have a big ummah. And these were all people who came before you. They put in what they had to put in. And here they are, like in a place. I don't know if you've ever done like community work before. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what I seem like when I interact with you. You see, my beard is like very gray and white. I don't think there's many of you in this room who knew me when I was like 22 years old. Ibad and I have known each other for 20 years, alhamdulillah. Um, and others we've known each other for some time, you know. Uh, but I don't feel burnt out, right? Alhamdulillah. So I'm blessed to serve a community that cares about me and checks in on me, which is not the reality of many people. You talk to a lot of people who work on behalf of Muslim communities, and they like are college MSA presidents. And when they leave, they don't want anything to do with Muslims. Do you know? They don't want anything to do with like anybody. They like are part of something on a masjid board, and then like a year later, they go start their own masjid. They're like, I'm just gonna pray at home the rest of my time, right? You get burnt out, you get exhausted. This man has gone through 12 years of tribulation, and he's seeing now in front of him people who went through like difficulties and challenges, right? It's not that they just had ease in all of these matters. They're still in this situation, meeting him after they went through all of it, and they're greeting him with a sense of upliftedness. Do you get what I mean? Like if you've ever met somebody who's pregnant for the first time, and then they give birth to a child, and then for however many weeks, months, years, everything is sleeplessness. And then they start to lose their mind. Is this going to ever be done? Will I ever have a normal sleep again? Will I ever have normalcy to anything? And then eventually the kid starts sleeping through the night, right? And then when they have baby number two, it's still hard, but they know there's still an end to the sleeplessness. Do you get what I mean? He doesn't know how it's going to end. He's sending people to Abyssinia, like we said. He kept them in Abyssinia because what happens if Medina doesn't work? It's only when they're 7 years into Medina that people are kind of being called back. But meeting these people, and they're not like burnt out. They're not saying, like, man, it must be terrible to be you. Do you know? But they're still in good spirits. And it's not even about quantifiable stuff. He's seeing people who have less people in their communities, people who have large numbers of people in their communities, but he's meeting individuals who walk the steps that he walked. And at the end of the day, they still have contentment inwardly. So everything's going to still be okay. We know what this is like. And at an end result, you're going to also be in a place the way we are in this place. Do you know what I mean? And what is it that brings them to that place? They just tried their best to do what it was that Allah asked them to do. They weren't going after stuff that was offering temporary satisfaction or complacency, not knowing what it is that's going to transpire. He still goes to Taif. When he comes back from this place, he's going to still have to tell people that he left from this place, went from Mecca to Jerusalem into the heavens, came back, and a lot of people are not going to believe him. They're going to tell his followers, your prophet has lost his mind. He's coming out of an experience that enables him to understand that there's still a basis to have hope in what is forthcoming. You get what I mean? And all these people who have dealt with tribulations, challenges, like enslavement, crucifixions, all kinds of like heaviness, when they see him, they're extending du'as. They're extending greetings of peace. They're in a place where they sustained challenges. Because you remember, we talked about this like 3-4 months ago when we said, who is the beloved of Allah? The Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam is the beloved of Allah. And he's getting pelted with stones at Taif. Why is God putting his beloved through this difficulty? Is it an indication that he does not love him? No, it's not. And now, when you're in these modes of understanding, a sense of recognition that you might be down on yourself, but there's still people who understand the good work that you're doing. Don't let what it is that is creating the difficulty create a sense of self. The masses might not understand, but you go towards a recognition and remembrance of who you actually are, and you don't need to seek validation from those that are looking to bring you down in the first place. Go towards the people that make sense. Do you see what I mean? You think after Musa alayhi salam extends a greeting of peace to the Prophet alayhi salam, he's going to go back and Abu Lahab's mocking and jeering of him is going to hit the same way? And then you start to think, can you imagine what it would be like? I make this joke a lot of times, right? And maybe there's truth to the joke. There's a lot of people when I'm standing and they come and say salams to me, be like, Assalamu alaikum. And then the person who's next to me, they'll talk to them and their faces light up. And I'm like, why didn't you say salam to me like that? Can you imagine what it would be like if somebody walked into this room and the way you greeted them made them feel as if like the space was just waiting for them to enter into it? And it's not to think about anecdotes as anomalies or like kind of norms, but just think about it not in a way that's funny or ridiculous, but like you could go into masjids and while you're praying, people are like pulling on your sleeves. They're like trying to get your hair under scarves. They're telling you, don't do this, don't do that before they learn your names. The prophet is going through a reality that he is just yielding to, not knowing who he's meeting, who's in the room, and they're all making him feel as if this is all just about you and for you. I said this at Juma last week, but a month from now, these spaces that we're going to be in are going to have 1,000 people breaking fast together. Allah accept it from us. Somebody walks into the room, wouldn't it be nice if when they came in, they were met with like a smile and a welcome and a sense of warmth and like, you are actually my sister? This is what they're saying, like, welcome to our brother, right? Do you see? That doesn't happen with ease when you fail to realize that gifts that were given to you at times when you didn't have anything weren't meant to be given to you, so you forget that other people don't have those things too. They walked in the steps that he had walked in their own lived eras and existences. And they're giving him what he needs because they know what it was that it was like to be in his situation. And just a simple acknowledgement, a simple recognition that I see you, I know that you're there. I don't contribute to the erasure of who you are in any which way, shape, or form. And with my heart, I extend a greeting of peace. You understand? And because we're all here on a Wednesday night when we could be doing anything else, it means likely you're going to be here on some Wednesdays in Ramadan. It's part of your responsibility that you welcome people into a space that's been gifted to you. And you think about what it's been when you have felt most isolated. Some of you might feel that now. May Allah make it easy, right? But you take that experience and you understand just experientially, what must this be like? Musa alayhi salam knows who the prophet is. How do you think it makes him feel? Some of the best individuals ever created in existence are just giving him a sense that we were waiting for you. And it sometimes just takes a minute of thoughtfulness to erase like hours and years of just pent up frustration and resentment, you know? And understanding it within this prism of what does it mean to follow in the footsteps of these individuals. And it's not an either or, it's a both and. Before all of this, they all made salah together. They did it. They're in a place where the camaraderie doesn't stop in the prisms of prayers. Do you see? Why do we read this stuff? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is the point of us being informed by the Seerah? What is it that we're trying to take away from it at these junctures? And you think about what it is that you're going to do when you leave from this halakha tonight. Like, what are some of you going to do tonight when you go home? What are you going to do? Huh? Everybody's going to sleep? You're going to watch TV? What are you going to watch on TV? Some show? I mean, clearly you're going to watch some show. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You're going to make food? Okay. Who else is going to watch TV? What are you guys going to watch on TV? Huh? What did he say? Impractical jokes? You don't have to be embarrassed, man. It's okay. Yeah. Unless it's embarrassing, actually. Yeah. What are you going to watch? Prison Break? Great. I've never watched either of these shows before. Not because I am saying anything bad about them. I live with a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and a lot of what I watch on television ends up being like what my kids want to fundamentally watch on television. You know? When you go watch these shows, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be watching them, but they're essentially being formulated by people who don't adopt the same ideals as us, right? When you read the Seerah, it gives you an indication of what our religious tradition is built upon in terms of ethics and values. The majority of what we get exposed to when we leave from spaces like this, like we're Muslim here, but we want to try to be Muslim out there. But we're bombarded in office spaces with a very ugly form of capitalism. We're bombarded in educational institutions with all kinds of forms of whiteness that make us internalize racisms, hate us, become self loathing. None of it's fundamentally built on a value based system that our religious tradition espouses. When you're reading this, the prophets of God who were sent to guide humanity towards God, they're being nice to each other, right? They're welcoming in somebody who's new to the setting. You're likely not going to see that built into the script of some of the stuff that you watch when you go home. But then you got to be in a place where you think, what's actually informing my ethical framework and my values? And the Seerah then is not just story time, nor is it memorizing dates and names alone, but you're extrapolating from it through a lived existence, a recognition of what it means for the Quran to be manifest in a human form, and then I seek to apply it in that way. What I like for us to do, because a lot of you are going to come here for Ramadan, right? By show of hands, how many people are planning to be here even once for iftar? Amazing. What can we do so that when somebody walks in, they feel welcomed the way that these people made the Prophet feel welcomed as he went and ascended through these heavens? Do you get what I mean? Because even if you don't buy into it, part of that responsibility is on you at this point. You definitely don't want to be who it is that pushes people away. And we want to be able to think what actually happens that pushes people away. Not that we water down our religious tradition. Our religion is what our religion is. Do you know? But within the confines of that, how do you start to do some of this in like simple ways? Do you get what I mean? So somebody comes in for the first time, they're in New York City, they don't have family here, they're scared out of their minds because their residency status also isn't something that prevents them from deportation. Religious communities can be intimidating. And what we see consistently through this excerpt and previous excerpts, they are trying to make somebody feel as if they can actually be a part of something. What whiteness seeks to inculcate within the psyche of the minority is a notion that you just don't belong. And the Sunnah is both the opposite and the antidote to supremacy. So we're learning about the Seerah of the man whose Sunnah we claim to follow. We want to start to ideate now in a way that gets us to see our role in this. It's great that Allah gave you a friend or a group of friends or whatever else. He didn't give it to you so that you would just forget that at some point you didn't have certain things. So, how do we do that? What gets in the way? And what can we do to make sure it doesn't happen like that? Does the question make sense? So, if you can turn the persons next to you, if some of you who are near the door can also trickle in this way, if you need to push over Kiara and Faiza, feel free. If they're blocking you, don't worry. But let's talk this out a bit because it's important, right? All of you raised your hands. You're going to come here for iftar. It's not transactional. You can come and eat iftar with us and be a jerk. Please don't do it, right? But it'd be amazing if more of us as a core were like thinking out together and creating an accountability mechanism also. You know there's going to be people who come in that are going to be in the shoes of the prophet, and he has no idea where he's being taken or who he's being introduced to, and it's all things that again speaks to the magnitude of his courage, that even in that situation he's able to have the wherewithal to just sustain all of it. And then the people who are waiting for him, they're greeting him in a sense of, hey, don't think about those people who pushed you away. We're here for you. We got you. And it wasn't like verbose and unnecessarily like lecturing. It was just like simple things, you know? Like, yeah, that person, I could actually see them as being my brother. I could actually see them as being my sister. Do you get what I mean? So let's talk about it for a few minutes and then we'll come back and discuss. If you don't know the names of the persons next to you, like what makes that hard to do? so that we can overcome it? And how can we do it a little differently here this Ramadan so that when Wednesdays come after Ramadan, there's like 5 times as many as people in the room, not because they're so enthralled by the content, but they want to be in your company. You see? They want to like sit with good people and want to be in a place where it's replenishing, and a lot of people need that right now. Does it make sense? Okay, let's talk about it for a bit and then we'll come back and discuss. Go ahead.
I know, right? I have a
Thank you.
Thank you. I think also I want to have like this style. I don't yeah, like I don't go out. That's why I'm saying that.
Okay, let's come back. Shh. So what are some of the things we're talking about? What do we discuss? Who wants to start? Why is it not happen? Or if it is happening, like what's making it happen? Yeah.
The brothers and I, we were saying that some of the things that get in the way is like shyness or not understanding. Like not when I say not understanding, it's not knowing who it is that you're gonna greet. I think it's just human nature to treat somebody different when you know them versus when you don't know them. And when you do know somebody, it creates a different type of approach relationship. Like there's a quote by Malcolm X. He says that we need more light because like creates understanding, understanding creates patience, and patience creates love. And I think to know love is, a brother said it, to know love is to have good etiquette. When you have good etiquette, everything you do, when you give salam, you're gonna do it with love. When you give a handshake, you're gonna do it with love. Um, and that's what I got.
You agree? Yeah.
I think at least when it comes to an environment, in an environment sense, every interaction is kind of like it requires two. One is the receiving party, and then it's the other party as well. And at least something that I feel can always be encompassed and is very easy to encompass is having an openness and understanding and grace, because we don't necessarily know what everyone's going through. We always try to obviously approach a situation or approach an interaction with kindness and humility and openness. But the second part of that is also the grace and understanding, which is that, let's say hypothetically, an interaction just goes sour for whatever reason. Maybe you say salam to someone and they don't return it, and that affects you in some way. It's having that openness and grace to not let that define things moving forward. Because obviously intention is huge, but also a huge thing as well. I feel like providing grace for one another in this instance, and at least in moving forward.
Yeah, but the unknown variables like are rooted in what? Is my acknowledgement of you predicated on your response to me alone, or am I doing for you simply because it's for you? Do you know what I mean? And societally, where egocentricity is like fed into us in such a way that it renders unhealthy relationships with the self. And there's always this mode of like, well, what might I lose or gain in a way that's unproductive, do you know? Versus like, I'm just going to do it because it's the right thing to do fundamentally. I know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to be by myself. I know there's going to be somebody that walks in and they're going to get sized up. Somebody might talk to them like very terribly. There's going to be people who are just like unnecessarily creepy that come with like bad intentions, do you know? It's a place people came to pray. They come to break their fast. They come to be with God. You'll be able to tell if somebody wants to be alone versus someone is lonely. Do you know? They're two different things. And what I'm saying is it's not like the primary is selfish. It's not for you to go first and like jump in to say, hey, here's this new person. Maybe they're single and they'll be into me. That's not a sister or a brother. Do you see? The idea isn't like, what do they do professionally? Maybe I'll be able to get a job through them. Then you're not seeing them as a sister or brother. You're going to pray next to this person. Do you know? But you can also play a role in being able to determine whether they're going to come back to pray again or not. Do you get what I'm saying? And the centering of the self in that moment can create a challenge, right? Like my awkwardness, my social anxiety, my potential like frustration or agitation, acknowledging those things get in the way to be able to then dismantle them and say, is it worth it for me to have potentially 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute of whatever that feeling is versus the gain that that person is going to feel like they have a place to belong in a world that is constantly rejecting them? Do you get what I mean? Does that make sense? What else did we talk about? What else did we discuss? Yeah.
We were talking about how the zip code can also matter too. How New York City is very transient for some people. Like, I mean, as one of the sisters was saying, like people come here in their 20s and then they go back home, and sometimes they'll even start like their own types of like communities or organizations over there to create that sense of belonging.
People
And
come here and then go do that elsewhere?
yeah,
No way. Who does that?
Well, I forgot her name. She went to NYU, and I was in LA for a bit, and she did something very similar.
Is it Zenith?
Yes. No, not Zenith. It's not who I was thinking of. But Zenith is doing that. But
That's so nice to hear. Isn't that nice? Is that not nice to hear? It's just me. Yeah. Why do you look so sad about it? Are you upset someone did that? Sorry, California should not have spaces
Sorry,
like
don't tell
that.
them
Sorry,
not
Luna.
to do that.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
That was the end.
That was the end of the story. Sorry, I'm getting old. Yeah, but were you done saying what you were gonna say?
No.
Go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, in addition to that, I think there's also like that understanding that it is transient and like you're not losing anything by being nice. You're not losing anything by having that warm presence and like having that like small conversation. Like just even asking, hey, are you a student or a community member? It can make somebody's day and make someone feel welcome. And I feel like a lot of us can relate to that. That someone else, we may not remember their name or what they did or if they actually went to school here, but that one question like kind of made people come back over and over again and create the space to what it is today.
Do you remember people who leave marks on your heart that are positive? You know what I mean? Like, can you picture those moments where it's just like beautiful? I was driving from DC back to New York and I stopped in Maryland at a rest area to pray. And I got out to pray. And then some guy who was driving the other way on the highway, he like got out and he started praying next to me. And at the end of it, like we both shook hands, smiled, and hugged. And then we like parted ways. When I was flying somewhere, I don't even know, man, where I was going, but I was flying somewhere. And in LaGuardia, they've now built like a prayer room, which, I walked in and there was Muslim people in it. And there was this guy who was a Muslim guy that was like a pilot for Delta and we prayed together and he was telling me about himself, I was telling him a little bit about me, but in that interaction also it was just like a genuine like interaction. you know every time I go to that room I'm going to remember him, but there's just moments, right? I was praying in Times Square, and I don't know if you guys have ever prayed on the street in Times Square. But I was praying Maghrib on like the sidewalk in Times Square outside of a restaurant, and as soon as I got into my prayer, the entire tour bus pulled up in front of me, and then all these people got out of the bus. I'm praying like, what am I gonna do? And they got closer to me, and then there was a woman who uh, came really close to me. She took a scarf off of her neck and she put it down where my head was going to prostrate. And then they all left before my prayer was done. I don't even have to know this lady. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? What do you think it did for her heart that she did that for me? Let alone what it did for me. What do you think it was doing back for her when she did that? Do you understand? Right? You got to just like destroy the excuses and really like think about it, right? We live in a world that tells us that who we are should be left at the door. It's true. You go to all kinds of spaces that make you feel like because of the religion you practice, the color of your skin, like a variety of factors that you are less than, and you're not. And all these people are going to come in here, man, in a few weeks. And we're already here. So what are we going to do? Tell them this is our house and you're just guests in the house? And the transient nature is not of New York, like rooted in your theology, in your tradition. Each one of us is already travelers in this world. That's just what we are. And you're going to have a choice that when you is journeying and you come into interaction with somebody, how it's going to influence the movement forward of their journey. Do you get what I mean? Yeah.
One thing to make me feel welcome is to volunteer with a smile.
One thing to make you feel welcome. Are you telling us what you need to feel good in it here? Yeah.
Make people feel welcome.
Yeah.
Also make me feel welcome.
Can everyone just can we all just turn to Hassam and just smile at him, please? So he feels like, yeah. You feel good now? Yeah, great. No, but it is, right? And if you're gonna volunteer, right, your volunteering is a privilege. Don't snap at people, don't boss people around, don't be yelling at people if they kind of mess things up. right? Shoes shouldn't be here, shoes should be there. Do you know? Shoes outside, by the way, it's terrible. I don't know if you think a shoe rack is for decoration. A shoe rack is for shoes. It's not, we didn't think they were pretty and we just brought them there. But if you notice, also, as we start to become more limited in awareness and wakefulness, right? There's guys that used to come here all the time that were on wheelchairs. They don't come anymore. It's really hard for somebody in a wheelchair to have to maneuver around sneakers that are in the middle of the floor, right? Just like it takes you 5 seconds to give somebody a sense that, hey, I'm happy that you're here with us. It also takes 5 seconds to realize that you're not the only person that's going to be coming into a space. And if you cater to the lowest common denominator with a sense of love, which heart do you want to have? Do you know? And the idea isn't like, well, everybody did it. That's why I did it. We set the norms of what the communal experience is. So the first person who puts it down bears the burden of everybody else following the precedent. And the two things are tied to each other. Do you know? It'd be a lot different if we don't just understand the gift that's given to us, but then we think other people need to have that also, likely. So want to be able to understand it in every aspect through simple things. Do you know what I mean? Like little things that could make a big difference. Somebody noticed me or thought about me before I even had to ask. Do you know? Does it make sense? What else do we talk about? Yeah.
I have an idea. I don't know if you guys do this every year. Like, do you guys do some sort of name tag, right, for iftar or no?
I think the volunteers get name tags.
Okay, I think we should, since there's like 30 days, we can do like a question of the day. So every day, whoever comes for iftar, like one of those sticky name tags, like one of the topics would be like favorite like sport or like favorite animal or like favorite color, and then you just have to think about like a couple, and then when you go inside and you're sitting down with like whoever, that's like the immediate like conversation starter, and the conversation doesn't have to stay there. Like I can talk about the color blue for like 40 minutes, but it's like a way to just be like, oh, like, what's your least favorite color? I don't know. Anyways, but it's to like bring out something that like somebody like doesn't always get a chance to like talk about. Like, okay, this is like, I mean, okay, I'm like really, I love Ultimate Frisbee. I'm like really, really good at Ultimate. I've played for like 8 years, and nobody knows about Ultimate Frisbee. And also, like, I don't think any Arab person plays Ultimate Frisbee. But that, like, I love talking about Ultimate, but like, I don't get to do that like all the time. And I just, sometimes I just want somebody to be like, and then like, how good are you? I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm dirty, like I'm it's so good.
We're gonna make it happen. There used to be a Muslim, like a weekly Muslim ultimate frisbee thing. Huh? Let's start one again? Okay. Are you raising your hand because you want to start it? No? No, but isn't there an ultimate? Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
I think there is one. I don't know if it's brothers only, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but there is one.
What were you going to say?
For me,
Yeah, you had your hand raised.
I was just gonna share a fun fact.
Share a fun fact. Listen, we're talking about the color blue and ultimate frisbee, so there's a lot going on right now.
Ultimate was invented in the town I grew up in. What year?
Ultimate frisbee was what?
Invented in the town I grew up in. No way.
What town is that?
Hamlet, Massachusetts.
There's no way for us to verify what you're saying. You can just be saying, and well, that is a fun fact. There we go. Now everybody knows. Individually, when you go home, like you want to think about it, right? Recognize like our prophet very purposely was making dua, anticipating the coming month of Ramadan, not just because it's a set of days and nights where you increase just the externals and the outwards. If you want a metric of assessment of how like fasting is transformative and prayer is transformative. You can gauge that in like tears that come out in du'as, but you can also gauge it in how your heart's becoming soft, is becoming aware and wakeful of the people around you, and how it is that your presence like impacts them, and where treatment kind of comes into play, right? We have to be better as a community, that we're not content with walking into a space that we know certain people can fundamentally, like in the most literal of senses, not enter, because they just don't come in and think that someone is like thinking someone like me would be in this place. Do you see? And when those things get to a level of consideration that isn't like, let's stand up and yell at everybody, do you know? But just anyone could be the person that puts the shoes up and say, like, maybe somebody just really needed to go in and make dua to Allah. Maybe somebody was really hungry and they just had a bad fasting day or something. We don't know, right? Husn al-dhan has like purpose in our tradition. You're thinking the best of others, like making excuses, not for things that are inexcusable, but you get what I'm saying. Do you see what I mean? And we want to ensure, because we have like various transitions in our communal spaces, new buildings, new projects, new this, new that. What we're trying to do is institutionalize a vibe that is necessary, that can then move from a basement of a church to another basement of a church to the fourth floor of an unobstructed view to its entire facility. But as things get bigger, quality, so to speak, has huge capacity of diminishing. And we don't want this part to diminish. So there's a lot of you in this room. You make a firm intention that understands where you can play a role, even if it's not organized for every single person, that when you're sitting in a space, that you have a consideration and indication that somebody might come in, they're not new to the space, they're new to you. You still engage them in a way that understands it. You got stuff going on, like you don't have to hate on yourself, it's okay, right? But there's enough of us that if some of us are not able to do something for some portion of time, it's going to kind of get carried over to those of us who can, right? Right? It makes sense. Yeah. And here the prophet of God, alayhi salam, is meeting other prophets of God after he's gone through like 12 years of just what? Do you know? And he gets this, and then he has what he needs to go establish his Medina. Do you see? And that Medina enables now a growth trajectory that brings us to a place that's sitting in the middle of the West Village of Manhattan. There's a lot of Muslims like 14 centuries later. Do you know what I mean? And this replenishing moment plays a deep role in allowing him to go and do this thing for another decade. You see? And it's just thinking about it and then recognizing, what does it mean, like that we're reading and studying this? It's not so we're just kind of absorbing, but we're taking and then we're actualizing, we're implementing. If you already do it well, that's amazing. Then let's do it better tomorrow. If we're not doing it well, then let's make sure we get good tomorrow. Do you understand? And then communally, we're able to lean on each other in ways that embody some of these things. Does that make sense? Metrics of success can never just simply be rooted in the numbers of something that happens. What fundamental difference does it make if we get 1,000 or 10,000 people to do like something that Muslims all around the world are going to be doing? They're going to break their fast and then they're going to pray, right? but how is it transformative? And we value each heart that comes in. You see, that's the ethos of this tradition. It's a heart to heart movement. Every single heart is precious and important. Do you know? And then this Ramadan, you want to make sure like you're like the guy that I prayed with in Maryland. I can still see a smile on my face, you know? You're like the guy I prayed with in the airport. You can still like just hear in his voice how proud he is of flying this plane. Do you see what I mean? And we don't have to know each other's names or ever see each other again, but he knows there's a Muslim guy he prayed with who told him that he's proud of his achievements. What does it take away from me to tell him that? Do you know? It's awkward. People don't tell people things like that. Well, maybe if people told people things like that more, we wouldn't have all the crap going on in the world right now, right? And if we can't do it for millions, we can at least do it for the handfuls that we can. And if every one of you in this room was the reason why one person decided to come back, that's still a lot of people, right? And it has a lot of deep impact. Every one of you becomes the reason why someone feels like they can have a relationship with Allah. And the crux of what we're seeing in Isra wal Miraj are illustrations, experiences, interactions of ethics, characters, values, interactions. That's like the idea, like it's supposed to inform how you treat other people. Do you see what I mean? We're going to move from this part into the Prophet ﷺ meeting the Prophet Ibrahim ﷺ, entering into what is called Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur, going to a place that's called Sidrat al-Muntaha, and some of the descriptions. And it's really beautiful to see like what some of these descriptions are. And we want to spend some time with that because when you have like a hyper legalized focus or a hyper creedal focus, and Iman is different from Aqidah, right? And this kind of black and white, very like, delineated, which is not the way our religion functions. It's very comfortable with the gray. You get to places also where what you remember, think about what sticks with you, because it's not true that you've never heard a khutbah that talks about Jannah or Rahmah, but like the ones that talk about hellfire and brimstone, they just hit harder, right? To outweigh one negative requires 5 positives in a basic relationship. And so if you hear more negative and the negative weighs heavier, it's going to diminish the positive's impact. But if you also never read like descriptions of Jannah, descriptions of paradise, like what it is that this thing is actually being identified to us through, why would you like aspire to live a life that acknowledges it as a reality and something that you would never want to give this dunya up for in exchange for, right? May Allah make us people of Jannah. So when we're reading some of these things, we'll kind of engage in some of that. But try to continue this conversation, like with your friends, your like people you hang out with. Do you know that starts to inject and make contagious some of these things, right? And there's some people in the room right now they never been here before. Do you know what I mean? Does that mean like all the rest of us go and crowd them? Be like, you're new. Here's like 90 new friends that you have. It just takes a couple of people. Do you see what I mean? Does that make sense? Okay, let's do this just before we wrap up. Return the persons next to you. What are some of the things you're taking away from today's conversation? What's it bringing up? We'll come back and discuss and make a couple announcements, and then we'll wrap up for today. Go ahead.
It's like there's no way.
But like I run out there. Yeah, you're not the market. Just really, I had run away. I felt like like I know all this stuff. Robertson said like we'll talk about no, I never that makes sense. Yeah, you're like, wow, it could be the same thing. Like, that's really cool too. Like, why do you say that? So I think maybe it's actually
Okay. What are some of the things? What are some of the things we're taking away from tonight's conversation? What are we discussing? Wow, so much more lively in here. Remember what it was like when we first started? Everyone was like blah blah blah. What do we talk about? What do we take? What's so funny? What's so funny? What do we got? What do we discuss? What do we talk about? Maybe we got a few people and then we'll wrap up. What are we taking away from today? Yeah.
I love the two interactions that you have mentioned before. They were like the interactions, at least that have resonated with you the most, were not grandiose statements. They were not anything that like it was not like you came into the masjid and everyone said hello and salamed you in unison, but it was small moments in which you felt connected with another individual. And in those moments of connection that you'll never forget them because of the resounding impact that they've left on your heart. So moving forward, at least taking away is being aware that in these small interactions that we have, that understanding the weight behind the small interactions that we might have and how they can have a profound effect on someone else, and that might be as simply as someone walking into the masjid, you saying salam, but in a way that makes it seem like like you haven't seen them in years and you're just happy to see them again. That can sit with them forever.
Yeah, I mean, if you can understand what's happening when I'm at a rest area, I'm already in prayer. That means this guy saw me as his brother and came to pray with me. Do you know? It wasn't that I walked over to where he was. I was already praying, right? It creates like affirmation and validation in a lot of different ways. Do you know? And then we have a short conversation. We're literally like on separate journeys. Like he's driving down one route of the highway and I'm going in the other direction. But we met at some place, and that's all we really needed in our interaction with each other. I'm not like calling him to hang out with me and have dinner and this and that, right? It's like you don't have to be a friend of someone to be their brother or sister. Do you see? Do you know? Does that make sense? What else? What else are we taking away from today? Yeah.
Well, it just reminded me of this book that I read in college. It's called The Banality of Evil, and just how unoriginal it is to, um, I guess, not be overtly loving. I mean, it's very casual, and it just reminds me that I need to be more proactive about my intentions when it comes to being loving towards other people, and also illuminates my limitations when it comes to doing just that, and just how unwilling I am sometimes to be intentional in my love for other people. It also brought up the fact that sometimes it's very difficult to pour onto others when we are not, I guess, taking care of ourselves thoroughly. Then that can be a limitation that make it hard for us to be feel connected and be connected to others. So I think that would just lead me to ask, like, what would your suggestion be to someone who, I guess, is experiencing those types of like limitations? How would they go about like still balancing out the intention of being loving towards others, even though they're faced with such issues?
Well, when we have hadith that tell us like love for your brother what you love for yourself, it means it's also okay to love things for yourself, which means it's also okay to love yourself, right? And if you're not kind to yourself in a moment when you're exhausted and get to a place where even through the doing of good, it can create like an opportunity for bad that isn't outward but back in, like you're not going to be able to take care of other hearts if you don't take care of your own heart. And we just like it shifts, right? Like I'm 42 now. I started doing this when I was 22. I'm not 72, but I'm definitely not like built the same way as when I was 22 years old in terms of just like certain types of capacities. Other capacities have increased, but other things have decreased. Do you know? And if I'm still alive in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, it's going to be. So I'm not going to say who it was, but Luna told me the other day she wants me to live till I'm 140 years old or something. Right? Oh, I'm sorry, 120. It's that different from 140. I would have looked at when you're 120 years old, you're going to be asleep like 19 hours of the day, right? But that's fine, do you know? And then when you live in a society that builds itself off of benefiting from your exhaustion, right? It wants you to feel tired and in pain. So you're constantly purchasing to numb things. It just starts to like, build itself again and again in these self-perpetuating cycles. Sometimes the most important voice is the voice that we're speaking to ourselves in a way that gives ourselves like allowances when unfortunately other people aren't giving us those allowances. Do you see what I mean? And so you could come in and just be running on empty, and the rest of us are supposed to be there to help you refill your cup. You get? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Um, I think I'm still just concerned of the fact that, and maybe I'm just overthinking it, but when I think about it, I'm concerned that because I haven't truly poured into myself, that it would then add to this whole theory of the unoriginality of people. Like I would just, because I'm not proactive in loving others, then that would make me complicit in the loveless.
How do you know you're not proactive in loving others?
It just seems like it consists of action.
Well, think about it. Like you said, you just had a realization, right? Like however many moments ago. Do you know? So if the thought just arises in the moment, if you give yourself some time to let it simmer before you determine what it fully means to you. Because in the moment now where there's an opening, right? And in our tradition, like we have du'as where we're constantly asking for openings and the tawfiq to take advantage of those openings. When you have an opportunity for an opening, other parts of you are going to still be adversarial and seek to overwhelm perspective of what that means. So if the idea arises, you can acknowledge it, you can recognize it's there, but you take your time in determining fundamentally what it might mean to you so that the opening doesn't close, because even before you take steps through it, your nafs, the lower self, the ego, shaitan, his whispers, the devil, are getting you to already doubt that you have capacity to do or have not done in the ways that could have been done. What I would do is go home and I would reflect, like, what does it look like for me to actually like love someone in a healthy way? How do those things manifest in the ways people have shown love to me? And there's a different sense of like human love, like sibling love, right? Like love for people that I have friendships with. Do you see what I'm saying? And if you land in a place through reflection that's like, hey, I'm just not getting this thing done, there's opportunity in being like, okay, like I can shift and realign. But in the moment where the realization comes in, the likelihood that immediately after, everything is going to suddenly be in a vacuum and there's not going to be things that are seeking to pull your attentiveness here and there, so your growth through that realization becomes either plateaued or stagnant, is very unlikely. Like there's things that don't want you to succeed. Do you know what I mean? And it's going to look different from every single person. There's not like one norm that goes into it. Some of us are extroverted, some of us are introverted. Do you know? Some of us are people who, when the days are longer, we have more energy, and when the days are shorter, like it really like takes a lot out of us. Some of us get sadder in the cold, some of us enjoy more like warm weather. They're not good or bad things. It's just a fundamental recognition of the self, so that it enables us to have like both kindness as well as a prism of working with reality. Do you see what I mean? Do you know? And you could land on the question being answered in a way that's like, I could be doing more, but being able to formulate an understanding of all of those things within a series of moments, let alone doing it without anything else trying to disrupt your thought process on it, likely having it over a series of time or a duration of time will probably yield like a consequence in a thought that there's still more confidence in it rather than something that leaves the door open to look back with regret. Do you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Right? What do you think? Does that make sense? Is anybody following what I'm saying? Yeah. Right. So you just give yourself time. Everything doesn't have to be figured out by tomorrow morning. Do you know? And when the Quran tells us like we're hasty, right? It's telling us like human design. Do you know what's going on? Adam alayhi salam, when life is breathed into him, like is literally like going through him, and he tries to stand before life like comes into his legs. Do you know? You can't like move in that way when you don't have the capacities to. Do you see what I mean? So like you've been trying to figure out if you should marry that person for the last 3 years. You don't have to figure it out by tomorrow morning. And your rumination is not contemplation. You replenish, you rest, you bring like a sense of self to the conversation that allows for you to see it from different vantage points. Do you know? And ultimately, the yield could possibly be the same, but the presence of self in the conversation is different. So it allows for me to either grow from it or look at it in a way that's self deprecating and back with regret. And we don't want to look back with regret. We want to take ownership over like perspectives that we offer, right? Yeah. Okay. Why don't we take a pause here? Um, this Saturday is our 7th annual Black Muslim Initiatives Symposium. It's going to be in the 10th floor of the building next door, the Rosenthal Pavilion. They've already sold like hundreds of tickets to it. You should definitely get one. They have an amazing speaker lineup. It's always like a very rejuvenating, thoughtful, knowledge based experience. Um, and our Black Muslim Initiative is like an amazing group of people who are really organizing and coordinating, a lot of love and a lot of wisdom, and just showing up to support them and what they're doing, I think would go a long way also. Uh, and the reality is that they've got hundreds of people that have already got tickets to these things, meaning it's not that they need anybody to show up, which is all the more reason why we should want to go for our own benefit. And that'll be Saturday all day. Uh, what day is it today? Wednesday. Tomorrow, I think Sheikh Faz has a halakha tomorrow, and on Saturday, is there a Faith NYC halakha this Saturday? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? There is, right? Yeah. So with Imam Zakir Ahmed, there's going to be a halakha here as like a Ramadan prep. It'll be happening. They try to do that for professionals in the community, meaning people who are kind of out of their undergrad phase of life, but anybody could show up. And on Sunday, our women's initiative has a program. Yusra, you want to talk about that program, the women's initiative one on Sunday?
But she's an amazing life coach, and she is really focused on like what it means to foster a very and cultivate Muslim diversity. We're bringing her in for the year of the soul event. Basically, it's also going to be a brunch as well. But we're going to do a lot of talking about Ramadan prep, pre-Ramadan prep. How is it going to look like when you are in the middle of Ramadan? How are you going to navigate your work-life balance? And also, very importantly, what are the steps you take post Ramadan in order to make sure that you can cultivate for women only.
Women only? Well, great. And then our Women's Initiative is also hosting its 12th annual Sharing the Love Drive, where they deliver care packages to women and children living in New York City's shelter system, experiencing homelessness, many of whom are there because of gender-based violence, domestic violence. Uh, I've had the opportunity over the years to be involved in that in different ways, packing these care packages, delivering things at times. We work with a lot of survivors of abuse in our community. We have our own shelter that we operate through Pillars of Peace. It goes a long way in helping people to feel as if they're not forgotten and that they're seen in the realities that they're experiencing. May Allah grant them ease and make us a source of healing for them. This year, we have the unfortunate reality that out of the 12 years we've done this, this year we've gotten the least participation in this campaign. I'm not sure as to why that might be, but it really shouldn't be something that any one of us feels comfortable with. The items that they're requesting are things that the shelters deeply needs, things that are just fundamental, like diapers, hygiene products, that they will literally be without. And when you think about kind of the realities that are being experienced, not just in New York, but around the country, as well as in New York, supply chains being impacted, prices going up because of a variety of policies impacting inflation rates and all these kinds of things. Somebody who's homeless, where are they going to find diapers for their babies? Where there's tough to get jobs and people get paid less than livable wages to begin with, and all kinds of things are being enacted that continue to suffocate people who are underserved and underprivileged. We just have to remember who our teacher is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and what does it mean to be there for people in moments that are like this. And so that uh, campaign's information has been circulated on our email list. Most recently, I think it went out yesterday. If you go to our Instagram page, there's a video of Yusra where she's talking about it, and a link that is up there as well on the ICNYU Instagram page. Um, there's two things you could do. One, you can contribute yourself if you have the means. But two, if you don't, like everybody has the capacity to share it with other people. On average, when you share a link of some kind, you get a $36 yield. Do you know? But what's going to get in the way from sharing it is a subjective like decision. Like why would you fundamentally not want to help a woman or a child who has been abused and lives in a shelter? Do you know? And it would literally take 5 seconds, right? Which is like the crux of what we're talking about. It takes 5 seconds to put your shoe on the shoe rack, right? It takes 5 seconds to give salams to somebody. It literally takes 5 seconds to take a link and send it to a WhatsApp group that you're in or put it up on a social media page. Do you know? We're not asking you to participate in anything that there's diverse perspectives on. And you might say, like, well, I'm not really on this side of this or this side of that. These are like babies living in shelters, man. It doesn't have to be 1,000 miles away. They're like blocks away from where we are. Do you know? So let's make sure that we fulfill what it was that was asked of us and do even more than that. Just doing our part, sharing it, spreading it, ensuring that we're getting it done. Inshallah ta'ala, like they're not just getting packages of products that they need, but through that, they're understanding somebody loves them and is thinking about them in a world that deliberately makes the majority of people just not even realize that they exist. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's take a pause here. People want to put their chairs back. A lot of us prayed Isha already. Is anybody going to pray Isha right now that didn't pray? These guys are going to pray. So if anybody wants to join them, maybe in 5 minutes, we can call the Iqama for that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.